Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. And we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. We have a big matchup on Big Monday in the Big 12 on ESPN, and it's the basketball version of the Sunflower Showdown between the Kansas Jayhawks traveling on the road to the Kansas State Wildcats. This rivalry game, it has been lopsided for the majority of time that Bill Self has been the head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks, but very recently, now that Jerome Tang has become the head coach of the Kansas State Wildcats, they have been doing much better, and they've given Kansas some fits recently. They've been able to knock off Kansas, and this rivalry game is becoming a lot more competitive. I wouldn't say that it's now one of the best rivalries in college basketball, but there's a lot more eyeballs on this game than there used to be, and Kansas State is definitely a more formidable opponent now in the Big 12 with Jerome Tang head coach. Bruce Weber had his moments, but the vast majority of times when it came to them playing Kansas, Bruce Weber's team were never really able to compete consistently with the Jayhawks. But Kansas State has been making this rivalry a whole lot better. But right now they're 14-8, 4-5 in the Big 12. They're struggling a little bit right now. Kansas just got a huge win over the Houston Cougars. They're 6-3 in the Big 12, ranked in the top 10, 18-4 overall. I'm going to preview and predict whether I believe that the Kansas Jayhawks will be able to knock off the Kansas State Wildcats on the road, or whether Kansas State can play spoiler and get a huge win over their arch rival and get a big win for their NCAA tournament resume. Now, when you look at this game for both these teams, it is definitely more important for Kansas State than it is for Kansas, even though bragging rights is very important when it comes to rivalry games. Kansas, they're number 13 in the net. They're having a really good season so far. They have 6 quad 1 wins because they were able to knock off Houston just now, and they have 2 quad 2 wins, only 1 loss in quad 3. But when you go down to Kansas State, they're all the way down here at number 82 in the net rankings, and they just lost to Oklahoma State as well, so that's not going to help them out. They only have 1 win in quad 1. They do have 4 quad 2 wins, but they have a loss in quad 3. Kansas State has to start racking up some quad 1 wins soon, and they're in the best conference to do it in the Big 12, which has more teams ranked in quad 1 than any other conference. But Kansas State currently is out of the NCAA tournament picture right now, according to the bracket matrix. Obviously, the Kansas Jayhawks, they are well in the NCAA tournament field as a 3 seed, so this will be a huge win for Kansas State if they can get it, and could possibly help boost them back into the NCAA tournament field. And Kansas is favored at a 63% chance to win this rivalry game to Kansas State's 36% chance. But that's not too bad. You would figure Kansas would have a better shot to win than that, according to the FBI predictor. But Kansas State has become a much tougher environment than it used to be a few years ago. It is very tough to win there, and it's very tough to win in the Big 12 in general. And when you look at Kansas's roster, they are full of talent. Kevin McCullough is going to be a draft pick this year in the NBA. Even though he's a senior, he's been playing so well, averaging 20 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's one of the most complete players in college basketball because he's a great defender as well, and he shoots 82% from the free throw line and 36% from the three-point line. There's not much that he can't do, and him playing as well as he is makes Kansas such a dangerous team because that complements Hunter Dickinson's nightly double-doubles. He's averaging 18 points per game and 11 rebounds. We know that he can also step out and shoot the 3. Johnny Furphy's playing a whole lot better recently, the Australian. He's averaging 8 points per game and 4 rebounds. If he continues to show improvement like he did in the Houston game, it's going to be very tough for teams to knock off the Jayhawks if you add him to the mix of weapons that they have. KJ Adams is averaging 13 points per game and 5 boards. Solid front court player. DeJuan Harris, one of the best assisting point guards in college basketball, averaging 7 assists. They just have a really talented squad, and their bench is getting a little bit better overall. And as a team, they shoot 74% at the free throw line and 36% from 3, and they're pretty good at blocks and steals as well. And their defense seems to be improving. They've knocked off Kentucky and Tennessee in the non-conference. They also beat UConn. But ever since Kansas lost at West Virginia and at Iowa State, they have been able to win their last 2 games in the Big 12, and they just made easy work of the Houston Cougars on their own floor, winning that game by 13. Felt like they won by a lot more, but Kansas has shown a bit of vulnerability when they're on the road, and the Big 12 is such a gauntlet. Night in and night out with all these teams. There's not even really a bad team in the league. West Virginia's the worst team, but even Kansas lost at West Virginia. So they cannot take Kansas State for granted. And I don't believe that the Jayhawks will because of the fact it is their arch rival. But you know Kansas State is going to give it everything they got because Jerome Tang, the one thing that he gets his team to do night in and night out is effort. They always play hard, but this team this season, they're not bad, and they started out very well, and they have some good wins, but recently they've been starting to slip. As you can see, they did have a couple losses in the non-conference to USC and to Miami, but then they were able to beat Villanova. They lost to Nebraska, but in the Big 12, they got that big win over Baylor, and that helped Kansas State's NCAA tournament resume out big time. But in their last 4 games, they've lost at Iowa State, at Houston, versus Oklahoma, and they've lost at Oklahoma State. And that at Oklahoma State loss is a backbreaker because Oklahoma State is one of the teams at the bottom of the Big 12. Oklahoma State just got their second win in the Big 12 this season, so that shows you how tough the conference is. Kansas State needed to win that game, and now that they lost, it's going to further hamper their NCAA tournament chances because they're on the outside looking in. But this game against Kansas gives them an opportunity to get a win that could put them back in the NCAA tournament picture. And Kansas State has gotten a little bit of confidence in this series because Kansas was knocking off the Wildcats over and over and over. But last year, the Wildcats finally won in Manhattan 83-82 over the Kansas Jayhawks. They did lose at Kansas, but it does go to show that Kansas State can get this done against the Kansas Jayhawks if they put their mind to it. They got a very good team. Arthur Kaluma, the transfer from Creighton, has significantly helped out this squad this year with 14 points per game and 7 boards. Tyler Perry, the North Texas transfer, is averaging 14 points per game, 3 rebounds, and 5 assists. When he plays well, this team can be very dangerous in the Big 12 and in college basketball, but he sometimes isn't consistent. Sometimes he has bad shooting nights, but he still is a very good player, putting up good stats this season. Cam Carter is the leading scorer for Kansas State, averaging 16 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. But after those 3 guys, the rest of their roster has really struggled. Will McNair is only averaging 7 points per game. Day-Day Ames is averaging 5 points per game. He's a freshman, but still overall, the Wildcats have a good enough roster to be competitive in the Big 12, but there's just so many good teams. That's why they are slipping up lately, and they're kind of in a funk. And the other problem for Kansas State is that they only shoot as a team 31% from 3. They shoot 73% at the line, but they also average 15 turnovers per game, and that's what's been costing them in these recent losses. And their defense is a bit inconsistent sometimes as well. And when their offense isn't getting the job done, that's why Kansas State has been losing games this season. So who do I think is going to win this rivalry game in the Big 12 on Big Monday? The Kansas Jayhawks are by far the superior team. That's definitely not to be questioned, and I'm not arguing it at all. But in rivalry games, sometimes you got to throw that stuff out the window, and Kansas State is a very desperate basketball team. They've lost their last 4 games, and they've gone from a team some people thought was going to easily make the NCAA tournament to now they've fallen out of the tournament. They got a quad 3 loss on the resume. They don't have good computer metrics with their net ranking in the 80s, and they have to start racking up some big wins. The Big 12 gives ample opportunity for it, but I'm concerned with Kansas State not being a good 3-point shooting team because with Kansas being such a great 3-point shooting team, it is very tough to beat them if you're not making shots. And I know the Big 12 is a gauntlet, and both of these teams just played on Saturday. Now they're going to be playing on Monday, and Kansas just played in a top 10 game against the Houston Cougars. So you could argue that they might be a little bit more fatigued in this game than the Wildcats, and the game's on the road, and it's going to be in a tough environment. So you would think that would lean Kansas State, especially with them needing a win, being desperate, and the type coach Jerome Tang is, getting his team to play with a lot of energy. I'm going to actually go with the Kansas Jayhawks to knock off the Kansas State Wildcats in Manhattan, 78-71. A lot of times I do go with the home team in these type of games, especially rivalry games, because it is so tough to knock off your rival on their own floor with how hard they're going to play. But Kansas State just isn't playing good enough basketball right now. I think Tyler Perry's going to have a good game. Arthur Kaluma and Cam Carter should play well also, but I don't think the rest of the roster is going to play good enough. They're not going to knock down enough threes. They're going to do good at the free throw line, but I don't think their defense is crisp enough right now to knock off Kansas. Kansas should be able to have a fairly good day on offense. They will struggle with that road atmosphere for a while, but I think by the end of the game, Kansas will figure it out, and Bill Self will be able to regain control of this rivalry and get a win in Manhattan for the first time in 2 years. And this win will also help Kansas in the Big 12 standings as well to possibly be able to win the Big 12 conference in the regular season, just like Bill Self has done so many times. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below about whether you're like me and you think Kansas is going to go on the road in the basketball version of the Sunflower Showdown and spoil Kansas State's upset hopes and possibly their NCAA tournament chances as well. Even though Kansas State does have more opportunities to get into the tournament, they can win some more games after this, even if they lose. Or if you believe that Kansas State will be able to knock off the Kansas Jayhawks for the second straight season on their own floor and get their best win of the year to put themselves back into the NCAA tournament conversation and possibly on the right side of the bubble. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.